Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
This morning's conversation actually grew out of some chats that Michael and I have been having for the past year. And he started, we have our weekly meeting or so, and we're doing some planning. And he said, you have so many musical gifts and you share them so generously here, and we're so grateful. But you also carry a tremendous amount of wisdom. I really want you to think about a subject you'd like to speak about on a Sunday, maybe the ancestors. And I think my first reaction was this. But honestly, I didn't feel like I was qualified to speak about this, but as I let it percolate, because it was a seed that had been planted, and it started to take roots and some shoots came up, and I realized that this subject warranted a bit of a panel discussion. So as I welcome our panel to the stage, it's a tremendous personal pleasure to introduce my friend, Dr. John Price. Dr. Price is a psychoanalyst with over 15 years of experience, dedicated to helping. Come on up. Awesome. Good to see you, my friend. He is, as I said, more than 15 years of experience, dedicated to helping individuals connect with their soul and transform their deepest wounds into powerful experiences of healing. With a master's in clinical psychology and a doctorate in psychology focused on Jungian theory, John has empowered countless individuals to find profound meaning and healing in their lives. As the co-founder of the Center for Healing Arts and Sciences, along with his beautiful wife, Ms. Leela Scott Price, John leads a unique integrative wellness practice that combines ancient wisdom with modern therapeutic practices. His groundbreaking framework, spiritually integrated healing, is at the heart of his work, guiding both practitioners and seekers on their spiritual journeys. John also hosts The Sacred Speaks, a podcast that explores the intersection of psychology, spirituality, and human experiences, featuring conversations with notable figures like Richard Rohr, Anne Lamott, Brian Murarescu, and Jeffrey Kripal. He's also the president of the Jung Center, Houston, and is on the faculty of Esalen, contributing to the dialogue on spirituality and healing. Please give John a welcome. And I would also like to welcome to the stage Reverend Claudia Olmos and Reverend Michael Gott.
Hello, check. Thank you. I'm going to start this off for a second, and I'm going to be a little autobiographical. And let me just also say, Ken, I am ill-prepared to speak about this subject. I'm not qualified to speak about this subject. However, I am qualified to think out loud and to push into some discomfort. So if you'll allow for me to do just that, I'm kind of taking a new road with, I guess this talk has opened up something new. I was sharing with Ken, if you're not talking about something, you're experiencing something, and you're wanting to speak from that experience, but I also happen to be a person that sits with people many times all day long, knee to knee, talking about all the stuff that they say, I don't share this with anybody else. And so I come somewhat qualified to have a say about some universal and particular themes that we tend not to share. And so I've sat across from all of you at some point, and eventually we've dug into a moment where you start to explore parts of yourself that you have probably never said out loud. It's experiential work. And so I'm going to do that publicly, and I'm going to say a couple things to get us started, and then we're just going to open this up. So I'm currently teaching a class at the Jung Center on suffering, on the nature of suffering. And I want just to sit with this as an inevitability in our lives. We all suffer. And most of the religious frameworks that we've ever had suggest we suffer because we live in ignorance. We're unaware, right? There are things that we just can't know about. And that's horribly uncomfortable for an ego that tries to position itself as knowing everything. And yes, you think that too. A friend of mine recently said that one of the greatest addictions that we all have is the addiction to our own way of thinking. And I think that's so totally true. And so fundamentally, what we're talking about today is actively and consciously pushing into your own discomfort in ways that literally feels uncomfortable. But ouch, that hurts, so I want to move my hand away from the stove. And we see that. Resistances are everywhere. It's radical, and it shows up in culture. And so the second thing I was thinking about is that I don't have relatives. Ken called and said, hey, let's talk about ancestors. Let's talk about ancestors. And I said, I have relatives. I don't have ancestors. And I lament this. This is sad. And it's part of what I'm going to suggest is at the root of a very problematic way of being in the world today that's painful for all of us. So Plato once, I'm going to read something. I usually don't do this, but my wife says it's when I tend to produce some of my better lectures, because speaking extemporaneously and off the cuff can sometimes get me into rabbit holes that I don't want to, I'll either forget about or, I forgot what I was saying. So I want to start with, Plato once posed a profound question. Do we have ideas or do ideas have us? This inquiry challenges us to examine the forces that shape our conscious and unconscious experiences. Are we merely carriers of ideas, or are we shaped, even possessed by them? In considering whiteness, for example, because I realized in my conversation with Ken, we were chatting through ancestors, and I mentioned something about whiteness, and I felt triggered as I said it. I thought, that's really curious. Why? And I looked at my friend's face, and he was like, look at that. So I did, and I've just scratching the surface, folks, and I certainly am not going to have a full purge here, but I am feeling quite emotional as I'm talking about this, so I know I'm into something important. So what Ken said is, let's talk about ancestors, and I thought about, in my Jungian studies, I've learned Greek up to like maybe 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. I've read from the Septuagint. I'm interested in religion. And I realized when I talked to this guy, Brian Murarescu, about his book, The Immortality Key, that something radical happened to me, which is I thought I'd been searching for medicine traditions or mystical traditions. I thought I was always going to find it in South America or with the Pueblo or the Lakota or somewhere in Mexico. And so my experience tends to look outside of my own tradition to find what I yearn for and lack. And so that's primarily the problem, is an inherent lack, a scarcity model. So I realized all of a sudden in talking to Brian that my medicine tradition was all over my bookshelves. And I needed to push hard, because one thing about dominance and dominance hierarchies is that the wisdom traditions tend to be taken out of the central position. And so when you think about whiteness or Christianity or certain power dynamics, what's really happened is an active approach to destroy art, to destroy philosophy, to destroy religious traditions that are connected with the land, and other dynamics like that. And we see this happens all the time. And so I realized something is very wrong with my self-reflection on what this is. So I wrote the following, and I want to just run this by you and then start us off. So Plato, as he says, do we have ideas or do ideas have us? In considering this question of whiteness, often discussed as a colonizing force, whiteness is rarely considered a colonized culture. However, by rethinking whiteness as a culture taken over, folks, take a look at it. Taken over by patriarchal or hierarchical systems of power. We gain new insight into this complexity, its exclusion of the feminine, and its problematic dominance. To understand whiteness as a colonized culture, we must first consider how it was shaped by these patriarchal, hierarchical power structures that severed the connection to earth-based feminine traditions. The rise of these systems has cut out the feminine, both metaphorically and literally, from our cultural narratives. And in the feminine, I consider that to be the body, the earth, and the intuitive aspects of the human existence. And a new cultural framework is emerging, or has emerged, which prioritizes rationalism, control, and dominance. This is human, folks. We need to think about it in terms of us. This is us. We do this. We do it in our individual lives. We do it in our family systems. We do it in our larger cultural bodies, and we do this. It's a function, in large part, of our minds and brains that like to think in terms of the part rather than the whole. And we need to recognize that all of our egos are subjected to this kind of limitation and filtering. Our egos are filters. They cannot possibly recognize the totality of our consciousness, so we have to filter through, and then we start thinking in these discrete categories like race and gender and religion. And this is our problem, and we have to do something to fix it. So this disconnection from earth-based traditions has deep historical roots. Many of Europe's indigenous cultures, such as the Celtic, the Nordic, and the Slavic traditions, were deeply, deeply connected to the land. Embodied in ritual, myth, and feminine deities. These traditions were systematically suppressed with the rise of the Roman imperialism, the spread of Christianity, and later the advent of capitalist industrialized culture. Patriarchal, hierarchical power systems replaced and rationalistic frameworks that elevated mind over body, reason over intuition, and control over harmony emerged. This is our humanness, and if we don't find ways to introspect and push into our own discomfort, which I'll tell you the primary place where I do that is with my wife, who's a strong woman, and she takes me on. So I found a formidable opponent, somebody to wrestle with, because I'm a warrior. And I'm part of that warrior class that, if left untended, will take over. I don't mean anything by it. It's in my nature. But it's our nature to take that warrior energy and push into areas where we're unconscious. So I come from a lineage of warriors. And we need the pantheon. So the warrior mentality is what took over, and that's what I mean by patriarchal. All male, very one-sided, dominance hierarchies that is extremely effective in battle. You want me on your side when I go to battle. However, the Greeks and the Romans learned very early on that when the warriors come back from their empirical domination, we need to create games to take that warrior spirit and sublimate it into something more connected, lest we demolish the city. You don't want warriors war-hungry taking over the city. We will assert our power dynamics in culture, in money, in family, in industry. So I'm doing this work, folks, and I'm doing it a lot, and I'm doing it really hard. And people like Ken and this conversation up here gets us to challenge ourselves and think out loud, if you have the blessing, in public, bringing your feelings to the forefront and moving into discomfort to heal in public, in community. We need each other. My mentor used to say, though I am in this world alone, I cannot do this world alone. So it's good to be in the work with you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, John. I want to draw Claudia and Michael into the conversation with the quote that I shared with you when we spoke before. The African-American filmmaker Julie Dash, she is, I think, Daughters of the Dust. There are a number of beautiful films that she wrote and directed. And she has a quote that says, "The ancestors and the womb, they are one, they are the same." The profound truth of that, when I read that, just stopped me in my tracks, but it also opened up a sense of my own connection to the ancestors through the maternal line, and reclaiming that disconnection from that aspect of our humanity, I think, is something that we are all encouraged to do. And I thought that the question about in our own lives, we may have disconnection to or impressions of or gifts from our own ancestors, and maybe reflecting on what that realization or process might have looked like for each of you. Whoever would like to start? Ms. Claudia?
You go first.
Well, I think that, we are called to be more integrative, to reclaim wholeness. Like our culture, also, we have these ideas of the colonialism that separate us from our indigenous roots, and not recognizing that that's the force that moves us forward, that is really, a moment to pause and to recognize that, that we came from also the indigenous people. Sometimes we have in our culture this kind of bipolarity that we want to be more white or more indigenous. So we have these two different sides. And of course, there is some myths about it. Like we think that being indigenous is not okay, it's not being smart, it's not being, strong. But actually, I think that this is the moment in these times that we are claiming that. We are kind of integrating that. We are knowing all the good that they have for us. I think that is a little bit of ignorance, like when we don't know all the richness that we have behind. That is the moment to look back and to regain all of that and integrate it into our lives. So there is a lot of richness in being in contact with the nature, with the environment, to take all these elements and bring them to life, to grow and keep, being thriving and resilient and make a better world.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
Michael?
Well, I've been sitting with the questions, and thank you both for your honesty, and you both have shared with me a little bit about the pain of this, that we've been cut off from the ancestral power and the lineage. A friend of mine is adopted, and she is a New Thought minister, but she didn't go to Unity Seminary. She went to the One Spirit Seminary in New York, which is an interfaith seminary. And one of the sessions they were studying, it was through an earth-based a shaman, and he was teaching about the power of the ancestors. And she raised her hand, and she says, "I don't know my ancestors." And he said, "They know you." And that's available to us. In my 23andMe ancestry, I have a grandmother from West Africa, 4 or 5 generations back. I didn't receive the cultural heritage of that. Someone passed as white in my family, but there I have that. I also have Native American. I got a little bit more of that. I'm Cherokee on my dad's side through both his mother and father. And I'm mostly white and Irish English. And 2 years ago, when I took my sabbatical to Ireland, I felt them. I felt the ancestors, and I'm so excited. We're taking a pilgrimage to Ireland next spring in 2025. What I experienced there was the regaining, the recapturing of wholeness of the masculine and the feminine. Christianity, as it spread across the world, did it differently in Ireland. That St. Patrick didn't make the pagan roots wrong. They were integrated and incorporated. So I don't know if you know, but Saint Bridget. She is not only a Catholic saint, but she is a Celtic goddess. And all of the places where water comes to the surface of the land is considered the opening to her heart. And so I felt that as I walked the land of my ancestors. And like many Americans, when I was like, I think I'm your cousin. I have a grandmother named Coyne, and I know that they came from Connemara, the region I was in, and it's a very unusual name. And I was at this little bistro, and it was named Coynes, and I said, yeah, I think I'm your cousin. And she said, yeah, you all say that, don't you? But I'm finding an opening in me to heal. I think about what Bell Hooks talks about when she says we shouldn't ever just say patriarchy. We should talk about colonial, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. It's the air in which we breathe. It has been running things on earth for thousands of years, and it has to change. And the ancestors have wisdom for us.
Amen. They really do. Speaking of personal ancestry, I did the personal 23andMe as well, because my parents are from Jamaica and Panama. And I did the DNA analysis, and both sides of my mother's family, my mother's family is from Jamaica, and her father's family is from Barbados. Father's side is all Jamaican, and all of them trace back through, on some level, through the transatlantic slave trade to West Africa somewhere. And the people who were in West Africa, who were captured and enslaved, they were coming from all of the parts of the continent. I had the opportunity, at my mother's suggestion, a couple of years ago, to take a trip with my siblings. She said, many, many years ago, I went to Africa with my older brother, and we came up with our own itinerary, didn't have an idea of where we were going, but we just went for a couple weeks at a time. And she said, I'm still living into the answers to questions I could not have formulated from that experience. And she said that's kind of what inspired her to say, I want you to travel wherever you want in Africa, but just go. This is your Christmas gift, go. And so I went for 10 days to Ghana and Senegal with my brother, my younger siblings. And it was remarkable on lots of levels to literally be on the land where ancestors likely came from. I have no specific idea of where my ancestors are from. But one of the things, the tour company I went with, they did a beautiful job of taking us to various sites in both countries, including the castle in Elmina in Ghana. There's a very famous Cape Coast slave castle in Ghana. And for those of you who may not know, within the slave trade, people were captured and were held in these slave castles before they were taken to ships to travel. And many of these castles have what they call doors of no return. And they make a point of pointing these out to people of African descent who may come, or all visitors, just to contextualize where they are and what actually happened here. And in Ghana, they had a beautiful series of ceremonies that they did for us, where they took us to a door of no return within a particular castle, and they created a ritual for us where we were asked to meditate on our ancestors, the idea that of the unlikelihood of one of their progeny returning through this door of no return, and to thank them and for whatever, for life itself, because we are linked to them no matter what. And the power of that ritual was, I wasn't prepared for. And then another aspect, and that ritual was after a series of other experiences I'd had in Ghana. And following that, they also had another ceremony where there was a particular family tribe that we were to have lunch with and conversation with, but then a ritual that they called a naming ceremony. Because in West Africa, usually when a child is born, they wait 7 days before they actually give them a name to make sure they're staying. And their first name is related, the name they give you is related to the day of the week that you were born. And then there's a couple of other honorifics that are attached to it. And because I was a firstborn, they used the honorific Nana. And so the name that I was given was Nana Kojo Abaka. And Kojo is the word for Thursday, for a boy born on Thursday in Ghana. And the last name is the name of this particular family. They were kind of adopting me into the family. And that ritual continues to resonate in some interesting ways, just because it's the contextualization and sort of the concretization of, there are other cultural systems, different understandings of spirituality that were pre-colonial or during colonialism that were supplanted and that many of us were cut off from. And to John's point, even within people of European extraction, oftentimes they had a similar, they were cut off in similar ways from their spiritual heritage, and encouraged to, and many times that is a layer of trauma that they're unable or unwilling to look at. But we have contexts now. One of the beautiful President Jimmy Carter says of America, he said, "We become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different yearnings, different hopes, different dreams." And I know we're starting to run out of time, and we could really have gone so many different places. I actually wanted to have the conversation about dreams, because as a Jungian analyst, that's rich ground. But thank you all for indulging us in this conversation. I hope it's been insightful or useful for you all. Thank you, all three of you, for being a part of this. I think this conversation is just beginning. We can talk about it over lunch. Michael, do you have anything else you'd like, or a way you'd like to wrap things up?
Well, I'd just like to, I think the theme that emerged this morning was like we're cut off from something that is rightfully ours. And so I'd just like, Gary, if you could come back out and come on the piano. I just want to do a prayer and just invite, before we do that, would you just turn around and look at the faces in this room and in the balcony? Just see everyone here. Every person brings a unique combination of all of the dreams of their ancestors and cultures, and we are sitting together this Sunday morning in spiritual community. How beautiful is that? And our diversity is our strength. We believe in unity, but not uniformity. Our uniqueness is what we bring. So I invite you now just to hold this space of healing, of reconciliation, of reclaiming the ancestors' gifts, that each of us in this moment, and collectively as a spiritual community, we receive even that which may not have any rational or, I don't know, there's no left brain way to it, but our heart knows the way to open and receive the gifts of the ancestors. And what I see from this is that we're all empowered to bring this to a unity that is filled with uniqueness. Each of us empowered in different ways, gifted in different ways, that we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the dreams of our grandmothers and grandfathers. And the healing happens now in us and through us. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.